So sports are in rough shape right now. We got cancellations. We just talked about the NHL post-suspending, as producer Mark has pointed out, suspending the season. Other leagues are suspending. I mean, if they suspend long enough, it's going to be basically canceled. I wanted to bring in Clay Travis to talk to that issue, but also his thoughts on just everything we're facing right now. Clay is the host of Outkick the Coverage, very popular podcast, and also the author of the book Republicans Buy Sneakers Too. Clay, thanks for joining us. Are you in Nashville right now?
I am in Nashville. Appreciate you having me, my man.
Yeah. So tell me what's going on here, first off, with this NBA player who tested positive. I saw something that he also had made a joke earlier about having coronavirus, then turned out he did. What can you tell us about what's going on with the NBA and coronavirus?
Yeah, Rudy Gobert is a player for the Utah Jazz, and he had made a joke a couple of days ago at a press conference about the coronavirus by rubbing his hand all over the microphones that he was being interviewed on as he walked out. And obviously it was lighthearted. He was not taking it seriously. He got the coronavirus. He also has given it to at least one of his teammates. And obviously this has since spiraled into a major issue in the world of sports and beyond, because with the quarantine situation that everybody has, once one player on one team gets it, that entire team is required to quarantine, and so are, to a certain extent, all of the players who played against that player. So it has spiraled into a ongoing, I think it's fair to say, crisis for the world of sports, which is unlike anything I've ever seen before, where one by one different leagues and different tournaments are making the decision basically to call off their games.
What does this mean, you think? Look, there's so many angles on this one, but let's start with just the health of the leagues, pardon the expression, but the financial impact this is going to have in arenas. I saw something that Mark Cuban is making an effort, he says, for at least for the Mavericks, to take care of hourly employees who are obviously going to be in really rough shape with the season being shut down. What can you tell us about how they're trying to mitigate the impact economically?
Well, I think that's a big challenge, right? And honestly, this is me putting my lawyer hat on. I'm already kind of, purely from a legal perspective, utterly fascinated to see what all these lawsuits and insurance contracts are going to look like. Because you could probably imagine this. For years and years, pro sports leagues have been taking out insurance in the event that something wild happens, which necessitates games not taking place, maybe the cancellation of seasons, and trying to figure out what the economic value of that would be. You probably pay, what do you think? I don't even know. I'd love to get an insurance expert on, but several $1 million to ensure that your season is going to continue to take place, but your payoff is going to be massive in the event that it happens. And it kind of reminds me of, in terms of the unlikelihood of it, of what happened after 9/11. When for lawyers out there, they'll remember there was a big lawsuit over whether the two planes that hit the Twin Towers were one event or two events, because it impacted in a big way what sort of recovery there was going to be under the insurance contract. And I don't even remember what the resolution of that case was, but you think about the 30 different places out there, right? The 30 different NBA arenas and the 30 different teams and all of the different aspects of that they will have set up, and all the lawsuits that will unspool. It's just kind of massive to think about. Now,
are there any leagues that are right now planning to sort of just continue with contingency operations with no fans in the stands going forward? How are adaptations working here for any other sports leagues or any other events?
It's happening so quickly, honestly, that if I haven't checked my phone, I almost hesitate to say, because something might have happened in the last 5 minutes.
Yeah, that actually just happened to me. I said the NHL is thinking about canceling, and then we came back from a break, and then turns out they're canceling.
Yeah, right. So I think that's the challenge, Buck, right now, is that literally it's almost impossible to keep up with how quickly this story is moving.
Now, I've also seen, you're somebody who has been pretty vocal on social media, and I'll just say, you and I haven't talked about this yet. I've been taking the position that, this is a be vigilant, take the precautions, but they're really, people say there's no need to panic, and that almost then incites panic. It's like Will Ferrell in Old School when he says keep your composure, and he's like flinging the chair around the locker room and freaking out. I think that there's a psychological effect that it has when people say don't, but I really don't. I think sometimes there can be a need for panic. There can be a need for everybody to hit the exits, and we're not there. I don't think we're anywhere close to there. Walk me through where, your evolution in thinking about the risks here as somebody who pays very close attention to the news, has been vocal about this. Where'd you start? And after what we saw last night from President Trump, and how worried are you, man? I mean, that's really the question.
I am not incredibly worried, all right? I think it's an interesting question, and let me just take a step back. I tend to be a guy, and you probably are as well because you're a smart guy. When I was a kid, I was scared of everything, right? Like a young kid, because you're aware that there is danger in the world, but you lack the ability to unpack probabilities and statistics of what that danger represents. So you're willing to go into the ocean a little bit. There's sharks out there, but you're not smart enough to understand what the chances are of a shark actually biting you, right? And so I was terrified of things like that as a kid. And as I got older, I used sort of my fear as the way that I would weaponize against it is by diving into facts and data in order to try to uncover the answer there, right? And so I believe that most of us are very safe, right, from this pandemic. Right now, according to the most recent data I've seen, there are 10 people in serious or critical condition in the entirety of the country. And there are 38 deaths, I believe. What's scary is if we went in the direction of Italy, which is about 75 times as bad when you adjust for per capita as what we have in the country right now, that would change. My hope is that we're going to move more towards what South Korea and China, how we're able to do in terms of virtually eradicating the outbreak in their countries, as opposed to towards Italy and Europe. And I think what Trump has done is basically say, hey, Europe is a powder keg right now. It's in danger of becoming China-like. And so we need to keep people from coming from Europe to our country and reigniting more cases going forward.
And in terms of the statistics on mortality rate and all the numbers that you're seeing, there's this big debate over, is it worse than the flu? Is it similar to flu? Do you have, I know you're not an epidemiologist or a doctor, neither am I, but from the latest data that you've seen that you've been diving into, what's your take on the both the ability of this thing to spread comparatively to other diseases that we see that are like it, and the mortality rates? You mentioned Italy versus South Korea. How bad is it in South Korea?
Okay, so South Korea is the best case scenario. And the data that we have seen from South Korea reflects that if you get the coronavirus in South Korea, it doesn't matter how old you are, but obviously this impacts people a lot older, but 99.3 or 99.4% of all patients are recovering. That is, they are not dying, which would mean that 0.6 or 0.7% of people are dying from this. So that's the best case scenario, is what's going on in South Korea. And I tend to think that our medical system would be more similar to South Korea's than it would, say, to Italy's or certainly other countries. The fear that I think is out there is that the coronavirus, we're still learning the transmission rates. The World Health Organization has said that it is less contagious, the coronavirus is, than the flu. Okay, others have disagreed. I think this just reflects the fact that we're in a very early stage of understanding this disease. And so the question which is going to be asked, and I think will be utterly fascinating as we move forward, is why did Italy have the problems that they had? Now, maybe it's the fact that the country is older, right? Italy is one of the oldest countries in the world. They are very social in the way that they kiss, right? Like they are very close in terms of personal contact. They have a massive tourist crowd that was coming over from Asia. They may have had outbreaks that similarly broke out all at the same time. Their overall infrastructure at hospitals may be severely decrepit compared to other countries. I think this will be, for epidemiologists, an incredibly interesting study when all of this is passed, to try to figure out and learn for the future, what did South Korea do so well? What did Italy do so poorly? And which direction is the United States going to go in terms of being South Korea-like, where we basically end this outbreak before it has a systemic overlapping, deleterious effect for the country? or are we going to spiral into a tailspin of ineptitude, much like has happened in Italy?
Now, do you think that it was the right move to cancel all these sporting events and arenas and stuff? I mean, if you were the professional sports czar for America, would you say, yeah, guys, we need to do this?
Well, I think Rudy Gobert put it all on steroids, because once you get a player who tests positive, then that team's going to have to be pulled out of competition. So I don't know that the NBA has any other options once Rudy Gobert tests positive. And I think that is why all these other leagues are acting the way they are, because they're saying, oh, we're going to have a player in the same situation as Rudy Gobert. Let's go ahead and keep this from happening. And I believe that is the biggest challenge that is out there, is we basically skipped a step, because I think the step was going to go from no crowds, right, from crowds to no crowds, playing in front of no crowds. And I think that might have held for a month, or might have even been able to last for a long time, but for the fact that Rudy Gobert got the flu, which jumps you right from, well, playing in front of no crowds is not an option anymore. Let's just wipe out the whole season for suspension right now. Now, remember, it's not canceled, it's suspended. And so we'll see whether that suspension is lifted and we return to the rest of the season. Depends on how things go in the weeks and months ahead.
All right, everybody. You heard it from the man himself, Clay Travis. Check out his podcast, Outkick the Coverage. Check out his book, Republicans Buy Sneakers, too. Clay, thanks for making the time. Stay safe, hydrate, wash your hands.
Same for you, my man. I appreciate you having me on. Thanks.
Hey, Team Buck, thank you so much for watching The First on YouTube. If you like this video, please click that little thumbs up button so then it will log as liked. And also, if you want to see more great content from The First, please click subscribe.